Yeah, I'm curious for the whole panel, the prospects of getting rid of the thermal cooling requirements of an IC, the traditional mouth of the face of the front of the car, so to speak. How does that play out with your design potential for EVs in the future?
Well, it depends if you're doing a pure EV or if you're doing an extended range vehicle. An extended range vehicle still needs a certain amount of cooling to cool the gasoline engine or gasoline or diesel engine when it's running. The power electronics and the battery still require some amount of cooling, but your point your question is fair. Yes, the amount of cooling opening is going to decrease as we go more and more toward pure electric propulsion. And that does two things. I mean, it changes the aesthetics. It opens up opportunities for designing the front end of the car so it looks like it gives it a different down-the-road signature. But it also provides for advanced aerodynamics. I mean, you can knock 10 counts of drag, 15 counts of drag off of the car by sealing up the grille. This is not something you can do with a traditional V8, V6 gasoline-powered engine. So it makes the car look different, opportunities there, and also improves the aerodynamic performance of the body.
And I think your point is actually the perception of the public is that you don't need cooling. So I think that's going to be another message that we use as we move forward. Your point is valid, and there may be cooling needed, but I think one of the messages to signal the fact that this is an electric vehicle will be the front end of the car and how you handle the grille. I think there'll still be a face to the car, and I think we all want to do that, but I think you can handle it in completely different ways, and I think that'll be interesting as we move forward.
Even electric cars need some cooling.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's quite a challenge. It's interesting. We have an internship program at our place that a lot of the kids recently have done electrified vehicles, and they always face the problem in the front and I'm the guy telling them, you don't need all that cooling. You don't need to have a grille with our Volvo emblem in it any longer, but you need to find a way to identify the brand without the opportunity of a big hole there to put it in. And that's true of a lot of brands today. And it's an interesting design challenge. It's going to change the down-the-road look of the cars in a pretty big way.
You know, when I was a kid, all of us are probably similar. We used to sketch a lot of cars, and I would draw mid-engine cars, front-engine cars, and I always knew, even as a kid, that if I drew a mid-engine car, it didn't have a grille. So you think about when I grew up in the 70s, Panteras, 911s, Ferrari 308s. The grille was not a signature graphic because the cooling requirements were very different for a mid-engine car because the engine wasn't up there. So I think you're going to see the same type of graphic signature change for this type of propulsion system.
But to move that on a little bit more on design of vehicles and aerodynamics, because we all know that's so important as you're trying to grab every last bit you can of range out of an electric vehicle. But will you be taking that, will we start to see conventional internal combustion vehicles look more like electric vehicles because you've learned so much from the EVs and you're going to have to squeeze out every mile per gallon you can get to meet the new fuel economy requirements?
Yeah, well, I think aerodynamics aren't going to be just for EVs, for example. We're looking to aerodynamics for everything now, and I think the interesting discussion will be perceived aerodynamics versus real aerodynamics. And I think if you go back to the images of where we thought aerodynamics was in the 80s and 90s, we've moved away from that. We've learned a lot more. Now, I imagine the Volt is probably as aerodynamic as the EV1 was, but it may not look it, but there's certainly a lot of learning there. And I think the perception of aerodynamics is the important thing in terms of is it seen to be aerodynamic or is it actually aerodynamic? I mean, we need it to be both, to be honest. I think.
Well, in the car industry, we've all worked with aerodynamics for many, many years. I think it's been part of all our designs for sure the last 10, 15 years. So, we have already learned, we already know what we have to do, and it's really not anymore about just getting the lowest drag coefficient, but it's really a matter of also creating an aesthetic design, which also has a good aerodynamic.
It's like I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
I was just going to say that, I think we've, through the development of, more fuel-efficient vehicles, I think we've learned ways to make the automobile more aerodynamic without having, so we're not all driving around in a teardrop-shaped Aptera. But there's, little tricks and things that we can do, like, for example, for Nissan, we've learned that covering the underside of the car greatly improves the aerodynamics a lot, so we can have, maybe pure electric vehicles that have the character and the distinction of a cube, or and then also have the same aerodynamic qualities as a full-size family sedan. So I think through the technology that we have and what we've learned, we've discovered that there are tricks and things that we can do to the design, which allows us a lot more freedom so we're not ending up driving around in teardrops.
Yeah, I think the aerodynamics, again, it's a challenge to a designer, not so much to create the lowest drag car. We all pretty much know how to do the things that will achieve that. It's more a question of, what decisions do you make where you find that, okay, this optimum form is just not doing anything for anybody. Nobody's going to want this thing. So how can I reproportion things? How can I do things to it that don't make the aerodynamics significantly worse? So it's really all about the design decision process and the creative process in solving the same aerodynamic goal with a different method or a different form. And it's going to open up a lot of challenge to creativity to find the same result aerodynamically, but with very different form.
Well, I think from the styling point of view, like in the case of Nissan, focusing on a pure electric vehicle that is uniquely, designed as an electric-only vehicle, it's actually opening up more design or styling freedom, for us, because, like was mentioned before, we're not like with the Nuvu here shown, we're not locked in with having to package an engine, but rather that engine is a lithium-ion battery that can be spread thin, underneath the entire vehicle. We can put that weight and that mass and that propulsion system anywhere in the vehicle, and that frees up a tremendous amount of interior space. So like for our electric vehicle that's going to debut in 2010, we're going to have a very short front overhang, a lot of interior space. We're not encumbered with the interior with a tunnel. So for us, from the styling point of view, I think going pure electric is actually opening up a lot more possibilities and a lot more freedom for the designers.